So let's quickly talk about different types of thrust orientation in space engineers and when to use them. So the first one would be a lot of forward thrust, with upward thrust as secondary. This is useful on scout ships because you can have high acceleration and then when you turn, you can start accelerating in that direction. Because otherwise, if you just have the same amount of thrusters but some of these would be pointed to the side, then you would be quicker at stopping when you are turning the other direction, but you wouldn't change your velocity in that direction. So you can have minimal thrust in all other directions except upward, so you can hover at least. But let's disable dampeners, and as you can see, I'm just holding forward and we can turn pretty well just with forward thrust. So this type of thrust is useful for ships that are constantly moving and are just made for scouting, but not for combat. So second type, I guess, and most commonly one that you would use, is with primary upward thrust and everything else as secondary and very similar thrust. This type of thrust, well, useful on anything that flies in atmosphere, and that is just a large ships that you wouldn't really explore with, but mostly hop around. And if you are doing this in space, you can have same amount of thrust in every direction. So with these ships, you would be most of the time stationary and just do small maneuvers in all directions when mining, for example, or parking. So you don't need to have a lot of thrust going forward, because in terms of fuel efficiency, this is not the best thing to use for exploration. And I guess in the same way, mainly upward thrust is what you do with combat ships, because that's what matters. If you have a lot of upward thrust, you can just roll around while thrusting upward and dodge most of the bullets, which, well, is more dangerous to do on planets than in space, but that is pretty much the strategy. So the conclusion of this is that you should prioritize one or two thrust directions and not put thrusters in large amounts on every side, and that for exploration ships it should be forward, and for all other ships like combat and ships that are supposed to land on planets but not explore them, like really large processing and carrier ships, you should prioritize upward thrust on those. And for ships that are space only, most of the time it would be ion powered ones, you would want to have the same amount of thrust in every direction for the large ships that can turn